Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Paul Brown Show. This evening, my guest will be Ms. Deronda Metz. She's director for the Salvation Center of Hope, located in Charlotte, North Carolina. How you doing there, Ms. Metz?
I am doing well, thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back. Tell us a little bit about Salvation Army Center of Hope.
Well, the Salvation Army Center of Hope, we are the emergency shelter for women and children here in the city that find themselves homeless and not a place to go. And may I also add to families, because we do serve men with children. So we're about a 300-bed shelter, and our goal is not
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Paul Brown Show. This evening, my guest will be Ms. Deronda Metz. She is director of the Salvation Army Center of Hope, located in Charlotte, North Carolina. How are you doing there, Ms. Metz?
I am doing well, thank you, Paul.
Thank you for coming on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about Salvation Army Center of Hope.
Well, the Salvation Army Center of Hope is an emergency shelter for women and children in this community who find themselves homeless with no place to go. And may I also add, we also serve men with children. So our goal is to make sure that when people become homeless in this community, that they can find some shelter. We sort of have really extended beyond that and provide services on site so people can move out and hopefully move out into housing with income where they can sustain and not become homeless again.
How long has the program been in existence?
Well, now the Salvation Army has been doing shelter in this community for over 100 years. So we've been in our present location for about 21 years. We're located right next door to Crisis Assistance, which makes us a good location because it's sort of a campus facility. You have crisis there that with the intent of preventing homelessness, and the Salvation Army next door.
What inspired you, Deronda, to want to be part of a program like Salvation Army Center of Hope?
Well, that's a good question. To be honest with you, Paul, I was in college. I saw there was a part-time job. It looked exciting. I really at that time didn't think the Salvation Army did anything except for the clothing store. So I was surprised to learn that they had a shelter. So I said, that would be a convenient job for me to do part-time. And plus at that time I was majoring in social work.
I know you deal with homeless women. You have some men that come through the program as well. What do you feel is the biggest reasons for someone getting in that type of situation?
The majority of the time is income. People just don't have enough money. So you may not have enough money and you get evicted, or you may not have enough money and you're living with a family member and you can't contribute to the household, and that family is no longer able to take care of you. The majority of the time it is income. There are times when it is substance abuse, when it's domestic violence, when it's generational poverty, and you may have never lived on your own. You may have lost your caretaker, and learning how to provide for yourself is something new.
Take me through the process of someone finding out the Salvation Army Center of Hope and getting into your program.
Well, right now, we've limited to Mecklenburg County residents, meaning you have to be in Mecklenburg County for 90 days. Now, this is totally new for us, but as homelessness grew across the country, and Charlotte being the city that it is, a lot of people that found themselves homeless was coming to Charlotte. So typically someone would call the Salvation Army, or they would walk in, identify themselves as homeless, be in Mecklenburg County for 90 days, And whether it's a mom with a child or single woman or a dad with a child, if we have the space, we'll try to accommodate them.
What's the capacity of your facility?
So the capacity right now is about 300 beds, and that's possible because we have about 50 beds at Victory Christian Church. So they actually send a bus over to the Salvation Army, and we transport women to that facility in the evening.
Okay, so when I contact you, do I come and fill out paperwork on what are some of the paperwork do I need to provide?
So when people come into the Salvation Army, they would come in, meet with an intake counselor, fill out the paperwork. Within 5 days, they'll meet with a social worker for an assessment. We'll assess what is the need. Now, one of the things that we're doing right now, because we made some huge shifts in homelessness, you know, there was a time when transitional housing was really the big thing. It's like people become homeless, let's put them in this program for a year or 2 years until they get themselves together. Now, all of that is shifting. All of that is shifting. So the goal now is to get people out of homelessness more quicker. So what we found is transitional housing was extremely expensive. And we sat down, there were studies done on a national level where we realized, no, the goal is to get people rapidly into housing. So as we're speaking right now, we're doing a huge shift in this city on how people even enter into homelessness. So right now we're working on a process called coordinated intake, which means that we're going to centralize. There may be, for an example, one number that one would call if they became homeless, regardless whether it was a male or female. And then at that point in time, we'll look at what services that currently exist and which program would best meet that need.
I know you may have some ladies that enter your program that has been dealing with domestic violence. Why is it so hard for an individual to leave that lifestyle of being in domestic violence to seek a safe haven like yourself?
Yeah, it is tough, and a lot of it is fear. Whether it's fear that that abuser is going to hurt you, or fear of just living a life, a different life. It's interesting because for some young women, they may not even realize that they're in a domestic violence situation. They may come into the shelter because they're not working and they don't have housing, and later sort of get in touch with, this is connected to some of the relationships I have that are not real healthy for me. One of our goals is, you know, when women come into the shelter, is to make sure we do what we call a trauma assessment. And that assessment will really sort of, even if you don't come in and talk about it, but it'll get you to start talking about, do I have, is there violence in my life? Was there violence in my history? Those assessments will help us to connect you with the services that you need.
I know a big issue would be confidentiality because they may have fear of, if they're in domestic violence, of their partner finding out where they're at. How big is confidentiality in your program?
Okay, so it's really big. So the reality is that if you have an imminent danger, let's say your abuser is here in Charlotte, you would seek shelter at Safe Alliance Shelter. The Salvation Army Center of Hope, we don't have the capacity to provide the security because we serve so many people beyond those women that have domestic violence issues. So that would be a better place for you to be.
How is confidentiality with the children that are involved at your facility?
So we serve about, and people are surprised to hear, I mean, we serve anywhere from 160, 200 children. All children attend Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. Sort of tricky. I'm an advocate, a huge advocate for children that are homeless and for us to be able to protect their identity that they are homeless. Sometimes, some years, we do it more successful than others. This year it's a challenge because sometimes the school bus will come and pick up the kids and other kids will find out those children are homeless. So for our home schools, we actually have a pretty good relationship with those schools to make sure that they are educating the other students. So we really try to protect the confidentiality of our children. A lot of times we'll have volunteers that'll come in, want to do activities with the kids, take pictures, post them on the internet, and it's like, no, we need to protect folks' privacy.
How do you get the children to understand that you have confidentiality, and it's vital that they continue their education because, just like you said, they may have an issue with someone finding out that they're homeless, and it may have an impact on their possibly self-esteem,
Yeah.
especially in school.
I wish I could control it. I wish I could protect them. I wish I could stop it. For years, I mean, I was so determined that I was going to protect our children, but that it's not the truth and it's not the case. And people do find out. So one of the things we try to teach our parents is to talk to your child about, okay, so you are in this situation. You're not the only child struggling. We really do try to keep the confidentiality of a child. At one point, we used to do a lot of news media around children and homelessness, and now we try to protect our kids from even being in the media and being identified as homeless. We sometimes have volunteer students who may want to come into the Salvation Army and do volunteer projects, and that's good, but we have to make sure that those projects are really structured in a way that the other kids in the shelter are not exposed to that person goes to school with me. So we're learning as we go.
Okay. What are all the services that you provide? 'Cause I know there's a lot of things that goes within that individual, especially getting their lives back together. So what all services would you be able to provide them?
So most of our social workers are clinical social workers. So meaning that we really had a capacity, because for me, and working in homelessness for 23 years, one thing I know is homelessness is more than a housing issue. Housing is the answer because people need housing, but they need housing and services. So it's more than just a housing issue. So we do a good assessment. And on that assessment, it will tell us what type of services does this person need to be connected to. So let's say that it's substance abuse services. We have a treatment program on site for women that need recovery. If it is a program where people need job skills, we have a job training program on site called Show Up for Life, meaning that you show up no matter what, you show up. And with that, it allows us to bring employers in, doing mock interviews. We do job fairs. At the end of that course, we have a huge graduation. Right now, we're doing Safe Serve on site. So Safe Serve is a way to teach people how to work in a restaurant business, and that's also a certified program. Our goal is to equip people with the skills that they need. So when they leave the shelter, when they leave homelessness, hopefully their lives will change. So on site, we have a child care center for people if you need child care while you're looking for a job, while you're in training or in school. Mental health counselors on site. Our latest project that we started, and I'm so excited about it, we have now housing specialists, meaning as soon as you come into the shelter, we immediately start thinking about what type of housing does this person need.
That's awesome. How do you get the mind frame of that individual so that they don't become an enabler? That you become your program, that they know that this is only a temporary type facility, and you're going to have to go out there and find employment, some of the things that goes on with life.
The most important thing that we do is we give people hope. And I say that because for years, we didn't have housing for people in this community. And affordable housing is a huge challenge in this community. Now with us redirecting some of our federal dollars toward doing some short-term rapid rehousing subsidies, we've established a huge partnership with the Charlotte Housing Authority. As a matter of fact, we have another program that provides 60 units of housing for families that are moving out of the shelter. So we've given people some hope. So there's not this thing where I'm coming in a shelter, employment is hard, you guys aren't helping me with employment, you're not helping me with bus passes. We're giving people the tools, and that motivates people to want to get out. Now, there's still, some times when you do have to say, are we enabling people? And so one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that people are invested.